We do have a shrinking number of families. We currently have the King and the Queen, and we have the Waleses. The Yorks are excommunicated, the Sussexes have disappeared. We don't actually have many working royals. We need Sophie and Edward. What are your thoughts about seeing her emerge this week?
We never think, you can never have that comparison more than when you think back to a few years ago and imagine Buckingham Palace balcony when the late Queen and Prince Philip were still around, and there was a very crowded balcony, and now it's as you say, there's really just the two households at front and centre. And also after the events of last year, when a couple of them were out of commission for a while, we really felt it. And that's when we saw the Duke and Duchess of Edinburgh really step up. And I always feel when we see these pictures of Sophie out on engagements, or in this case the one with William, which was so much fun, the two of them were joking about having a drink together and they just had this easy banter. You can tell they get along. And when you see her out and about and engaging with people, it's always just a really easy thing to watch her do it. She does it with such ease. She connects with people so well. And you wonder why we don't see more from her, because exactly as you say, there's a space for it. So I think that hopefully there'll be more of that in the future, especially as the Waleses move up through the ranks, down the line, whenever that is, because I think the Duke and Duchess of Edinburgh have a really good way of sort of, and not to sound ageist at all, but to bridge the gap, to broaden the demographic of appeal for the royals, because you've got William and Catherine that are in their 40s, and then you've got the others who are in their 70s, and you've got, Sophie and Edward sort of in the middle there, and people really like them, and they work very hard.
Well, they're seasoned professionals as well.
Yeah.
They've been doing this for a long... They were doing this way before the Sussexes arrived, to be honest. Way before Meghan arrived. Sophie and Edward were doing lots of great work. What do you think they bring?
Well, she's not afraid to tackle... And to finish that thought too, she's not afraid to tackle the tough issues. We've seen Sophie really get out there in some of the conversations that were a little bit more taboo, and she goes out into these war-torn countries and she's speaking about sexual violence and things that, they're extremely difficult topics to cover, but it's something she's never shied away from. And I think that's what she can really bring to the table. And again, I think people respond to it well when they see it. I want to see more of it.
Yeah, she's a lovely person too, and a joy to photograph. But for some reason, newspapers and TV don't publish it, don't run the stories. They don't go to India when she goes to India. They don't go to Mali and these places where she goes. It just seems that all the good work she does goes unreported.
I just wonder, partly that I think is the fault of the palace, because I don't think often they don't tell us in advance where she's going and only tell us when she's already got there, which doesn't help when you've got, to dispatch cameras halfway around the world. And I agree with you. She does do some fantastic work in the Middle East and Africa, helping children who, are suffering from potential blindness. In adulthood. So, yes, she could do a lot more, and I think she is a real asset. I think it's beholden on Buckingham Palace to put her out there more, if, of course, that's what she wants to do. But I completely agree with you. And when I started covering this job, we had so many households, you kind of lost count of them. You didn't really need the Wessexes as they were then, or the Edinburghs as they are now. But you kind of do now. It is feeling a little bit thin on the ground at the moment. So
and their kids as well. I was thinking about this. We've got George and Charlotte and Louis. There is no doubt that they are going to be on the world stage when it's the time. They will be out there. People already are very engaged in watching them. But there are a lot of years, hopefully for them, before they need to be out there as working royals. They're quite young. George is still 11. So you look at then the Duke and Duchess of Edinburgh's kids. We've got Lady Louise is 21 and James is 17. I don't believe either of them are taking the HRH title. I don't know what interest they have in becoming working royals, but we saw the late Queen bring in her cousins when she was Queen, and they helped out on engagements and stuff. And I think that we could see that possibly down the line when William becomes the king. He might call in them, because again they're more of an appropriate age to be able to help out with royal duties.
Well, it's a sensible move. that you've raised there, bringing in Lady Louise. I think graduates this summer. She's one of the cleverest royals on the roster. She was a straight-A student at school. She's gone to university and she's absolutely smashing it at university. She could be a massive asset. Do you think about the Edinburgh children maybe stepping up in the future?
I think it depends if they want to, and I think there has to be led by them, doesn't it? Because there's no point in the institution, the grey suits as Meghan called them, forcing them to do something they don't want to do. But if that's what they want to do, there is definitely space for them. And I think we've seen, particularly with Lady Louise, who was a very sort of shy teenager teenager. We've seen her grow in confidence over the years as well. When we do see her at big public engagements, she does look a lot more confident now.
Well, Sophie's always been called the kind of secret weapon, hasn't she? And I could see potential.
But too secret.
So secret,
no one knows about her.
So secret we never see her in the papers. That's how secret she is. Yeah.
But Lady Louise could be, that person that steps up. I'm just wondering whether the kind of House of Edinburgh could replace the House of Sussex at some stage.
I mean, I don't think replace like for like. I think they could be an additional resource for Buckingham Palace. Yes, of course. Prince Edward, the Duke of Edinburgh now, recently celebrated his 60th birthday, so they're not spring chickens either, but I take your point that they are that sort of generation in between William and Kate and the King and Queen. But yes, I think it really has to depend on whether the kids want to do it. And if they do, then I think that there's plenty of work for them.
Yeah, 100%. I mean, just to pull back the curtain slightly on the rota that we do, you were talking there about Buckingham Palace maybe giving them more exposure. It's a case of we do rotas for William and Catherine, for the King and Queen. We're kind of invited along to cover those engagements.
Yeah. But sometimes with Princess Anne, for example, when she went back to the hospital in Bristol.
It's only occasional for Anne
I agree.
and the Edinburghs, isn't it? But we would love to do that, and I think viewers and readers would love to read
I don't
about
think
it.
Anne's bothered much about it anyway.
No, she doesn't care whether there are 20 cameras or no cameras.
She couldn't care less if you was there or not, I promise you, because if you're there, she's just like her father. She just ignores you. She just treats you like a telegraph pole, like a father. She just walks around you and carries on. I don't think she could care less if they were there. But I tell you what, I'd like to see do some work. Princess Eugenie. She's a fantastic kid, and she's doing so much for these children with these back problems, and she really cares. And I know I've got a granddaughter that had to have this operation, and Eugenie was so kind to her. She so helped her, and I think I'd like to see her do more, perhaps Beatrice as well, but they seem to be sidelined.
Matt, I remember you mentioned about the rota, and I remember a few years ago, it was just as we were coming out of COVID, of course, Harry and Meghan had already left, and they put on a rota, which was very unusual at the time, for the then Countess of Wessex at a pub in Surrey, somewhere not far from where they lived in Bagshot Park. And it was about her sort of encouraging the hospitality industry after that terrible time they had during COVID. I thought then that was the start of us seeing this happen much more regularly, but it hasn't. We're now in, 2025? And it is, as you point out, we don't often get rota jobs for the Duchess of Edinburgh. And the one in Cornwall that she did with William last week was, again, a rare exception.
Rare but welcome. Are we all agreeing on that as well?
Yeah.
Oh, this is brilliant. What a show.
It's a Palace call out. If they're watching, you want you want the rotas.
We want more.
Okay.
One person, two people we cannot avoid, or it's now 4 people we cannot avoid.
Arthur's going to walk out.
We have to talk about Meghan's Instagram. It started on January the 1st with a huge explosion, and it hasn't stopped. It's been on fire all year. I was going through, at the end of last year, all the Sun front pages, and I put them all out on X, the royal front pages, to show what had happened throughout the royal year. And Meghan wasn't on it. I think she was on once with Harry when Harry was in Canada, at like a pre-Invictus Games event. She wasn't there. She wasn't big news last year. She is big news now because of her Instagram.
Well, it's in her voice. She's now, since January 1, like it or hate it, she's now releasing information and videos and personal looks at her life and details of her businesses and launching things all through her own account. It's been a lot to take in. I think last week took a lot of people by surprise with the twerking video.
It was a lot to take in, wasn't it?
That's for sure. I honestly genuinely had to go to her page to make sure it had originated there because I thought it was a parody. But no, it was real.
Why is she doing this? Why is she... That twerking video, for instance, and the Disneyland video, I mean, these have gone viral. Why is she doing this?
Well, I'm trying... to separate the two thoughts, I feel, we're discussing it in the context of royals and royal family. But now I suppose we need to discuss it in terms of entertainment. She is someone who is now working as an influencer. The direct marketing campaign is to your Instagram audience. In that respect, I think she's got something like 42 million views on this video, which I think all of us were among them. But everyone I've ever spoken to seems to have been among them. In that regard, yes, there are eyes on her page. There are people watching what she's doing. That directly relates, I would assume, to the sales that she's having and eyes that are on her Netflix show and, that are going to her website as ever. In that regard, again, Look, personally, it was obviously very difficult to watch. It was quite cringeworthy. In that regard, I think, okay, you are generating headlines. That is the aim of people in this space. But then when you compare it to, how we would react, with the working royals putting out that kind of content, I think it's apples and oranges because, of course, looking at it through that filter, you think, what are you doing?